anyone who's watching this that doesn't know about 4Energy or what they do, I mean, how did 4Energy start and what does 4Energy do?
So, my background is just to let you know a bit about my background first. I started my first business in 1992 and sold in 2010 to Lloyd's Development Capital. We sold to, we had three businesses, main businesses at the time. Turnover was about 13 million with 1.2 EBIT. I had the Royal Warrant from the Queen in 2003. After I sold the company, I decided to look at other avenues, and some of these were to do with combined heat and power, solar, and this is back in 2013, 2014. And then I started with a company as a commercial director role for Eurosite Power and started to learn about CapEx, OpEx free projects and how by using energy costs and energy saving costs, you can actually create projects out of nothing. And that was really the focus. My focus is surrounding analytics, data, and how using analytics and data can then create projects. I started to look at creating a company called Analytics for Energy. And then in 2016, 2017, we formed the business. I think it's 2019, eventually we formed the business. 4Energy Group was 2016 with Analytics for Energy. 2019, we did a management buyout of System 5 controls and services. And my thought behind this was to find a client base to drive the analytics business. My world, the future is data and how we view this data and the power of data, taking everything from any source. So it can be, you have Hanson and you say to them, how much does that brick cost to make? And they'll laugh at you and you say, well, how much? And they'll say, well, about 0.5 a penny. Right, what about that one? And they think you're joking, but it's all to do with things like ambient burning temperatures, wastage, and just things you can pick up from data from all different sources into an analytical data warehouse, and then provide, obviously, outputs in the form of graphics and data presentation. So my love and passion is on the data side of things and to find a client base because I struggled to start with. The easiest way was to carry out a buy and buyout of the of controls companies. Thanks to a lot of discussions we've had time actually for Phil, Terry, and myself, just time away from the business to start to talk more about the direction of the business and maybe some positive changes that we need to make. And some of it's come from the information you've given us on the profiling of the staff. But yeah, it was a good 2 days away, and there was a couple of whiskies at the end of it, which probably finished me off. So yeah, it was a good time out. So it's been hard work this week, but very rewarding.
So what were some of the things that came out of that then in terms of where you want things to go?
It's I think more structured approach around sales processes. So, whereas sort of having several companies brought into a group can have all its different challenges, but then to try and have some procedures that overarch the whole group is a positive. So now I'm going to start to organise more sales teams, more focused on return dates, repeat business, and chasing works because so often you're just so busy in your day-to-day work you don't do the simple things such as call your client up, have a bit of one-on-one with your client, and actually start to push the business in a more personable manner because let's take it, we in controls industry, we're in an industry where people buy off people, so you have to be made available to them. So that's one. We spoke about restructuring. We spoke about family investment companies and how they might benefit the business and ourselves individually. Um, we spoke about each individual part of the business and its requirements moving forward in staff. and also which came up in your profiling about training of staff and actually starting to set up proper procedures for, every year have a sit down and work out a training plan, what people are happy, what they're happy about, what they're not. And I think when you talk to staff, generally they know what they're good and bad at, but then never say it so it doesn't reverberate. So they can't actually. And once they realize, oh yeah, I know what all my points are that I'm failing on, then you can do things to put things in place that will then sort of reconcile that.
What's the bigger plan in terms of building out 4Energy Group?
Well, I think it's now that so as a business, there are certain steps and certain growth steps that need to be taken to make sure you can support the next level and the next stage of the business. And for a couple of years, we totted around the £4 or £5 million mark. It's only once you breach that that actually you become really profitable, and then things start to open up and opportunities open up. So I think at this stage now we have a lot of options and a lot of avenues to either acquire or be acquired. So I think it's exciting times now. We have a lot of options, and we've now, thanks to yourself, we've had time to sit back strategically and look at where we are, and where we want to be. Um, Minimum now we need to grow by 3 times, a multiple of three, we realize. And it's how we do that.
You mentioned about glass ceiling that you'd hit, you couldn't breach through the 5 million for a couple of years. What was the defining thing that enabled you to get through that first glass ceiling?
It was refocusing our efforts. So I was moved solely into sales to allow the other directors to do the operations side of the business and look after their key clients. So they could support their key clients a lot better and not just a scattergun approach. And whereas I was left to develop new business. And as you said, we're like a Top Gear team. We're totally
Yeah.
different characters, and my character is more sort of sales positive, enthusiastic. Terry's like a management with a sledgehammer, and Phil's the one doing the needlework in the background to make sure everything's perfect.
Yeah.
It was really to move us into the positions that we were suited to and that we enjoyed, and therefore gave more enthusiasm, and then it just naturally happened.
So going forward, so you breached that forward, and now you're saying about 3 times multiple of where you are, not 3 times multiple, but 3 times the size you are now. What's the first things that you've identified that will enable that growth? Because that's a massive growth going from where you are now to threefold.
Yeah, so we're about it should be 6 to 7 million now. I think one of the important things is to try to rather be not be hands-on, to try and pull back and direct. We're directors, we should direct, and focus on what it is that we do and trust that we've delegated correctly underneath us. So there are three main things which need to be balanced. One is the financial side of the business to make sure we've got money for growth. Second is sales and being strategic in sales and repeat business, which is, we rely a lot on repeat business by providing the best service. And the third is to try and get the right staff to support the business. So you have to sort of move these three pillars up side by side, because it all rotates.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's our biggest challenge at the moment.
So I think for the three of you, how are you going to monitor that you don't get dragged into those things? I know you've said that you've clearly articulated what those three elements are, but the danger is that especially like with people like Terry, there's very hands-on, yeah,
Yeah.
and Phil does obviously certain elements within the business that, and yourself as well. You've all got that. If it grows a certain way, you've got that strong possibility that you're going to get dragged back in if you're not careful.
Mm. Well, we've already arranged for our next meeting to discuss strategy and business, which is a positive.
Yeah.
I think only having breaks for phone calls in meetings rather being reactive is a positive.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, from Terry's perspective, he was too much living by the minute. And that's because he wants to help everyone. And for him to actually realise, so he's just had his honeymoon, and we didn't pester him.
Yeah.
Nobody pesters him, and life goes on, and the
Yeah.
business carries on going. And then for him to say, "Look, I'm sorry, but I'm going to promote you, and now you need to have people helping you because I'm now stepping back." And it's well, I call it releasing the screwdriver.
Yep. I think it's a great thing because obviously we've all been in the same meeting together and Terry's phone goes non-stop and he is distracted by it. And for him to
Well,
actually be able
we're
to turn it
distracted
off,
by it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, for him to turn that off
yeah.
and during a meeting, I think is a massive step forward. I mean, it's only a small one, but it's also a very big one.
Yeah, it is for focus, and then he's
Yes.
more focused in, and he brings more to the meeting because what used to always happen is me and Phil are the detail people, so we'll talk about things and we'll run things together, and then right at the last minute, Terry go, "But how about this?" And we go, why didn't you say that right at the beginning? Like, because you're right, and that changes everything. So he has got a big contribution, but he just needs to know he's got to make it up the front end, not at the back end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just thinking about growth again, and we sort of talked about what that looks like from the group building point of view. Can you share a bit more about your thinking of what that bigger group looks like, and from an acquisition point of view, what sort of acquisitions in the future you might be looking at?
Well, what we've done so far is we've looked at key people within businesses that wanted to start their own business, such as Andor. And that's been a great success. So somebody's been moved over to us. We create all the support services, help to mature the business, create a good sounding board level, and the finances to allow that business to grow. And then there's certain kickers that will then give further shares to that person until they have the majority of the business and we become a minor shareholder. So that is one area of growth that we've looked at. There are a couple other companies that we're interested in. I think, whether you create a synergy group ready for sale is a big positive. We're aware of businesses, in the same arena as ourselves that would be ready for sale now. That's one approach. It's obviously we've spoken about direct listing and going on the acquisition trail. I think if we do that, we've just got to go hell for leather, but create our targets prior to listing and to actually make those contacts and get those deals ready prior to listing. Because once we do that, then there's obviously we're under pressure to complete deals. And then, if there's any other way we can finance a deal, let's have a look at it.
And are there specific types of companies that you think naturally would be a better fit, both in terms of the ethos, and where sort of potential strategic gaps are at the moment, or where the business is moving more towards? So in terms of the sort of the service side of the business, the design side of the business, the analytics side of the business, is there a particular slant you think that you would want to focus on to begin with, or is it broader than that?
I think that service brings bigger value into the business for becoming incumbent, for contracting, and also selling on the licensed products that we have, the energy management system, our life site system, energy pay for tenant billing. You can create business out of the service base. I think service is absolutely key to drive the analytics side of the business as well. So if we look at projects feeds maintenance, maintenance feeds analytics. So if we can jump in straight into companies that have a good service base, I think that's really where we should look at. Also, it's different trying to not dilute our sales pipeline at present. So to try and have Schneider partners, Siemens partners, other BMS systems that we don't currently service, and then to look strategically of where they're based. So it would be nice to start to spread. We've always had the vision to spread to Midlands and Northeast, Northwest, especially Northwest. Obviously, Scotland has always been a place that has been hard to work in for English BMS companies, but to partner with somebody up there, I think would be good as well.
Just to touch on again what you were talking about earlier, that growth, threefold growth, is that a short-term plan? What's the time frame that you're thinking of achieving that?
Well, what we do now is in our accounting systems, I'm more focused on rolling 12.
Mm.
So we're now going to look at rolling 12 using standard EBIT calculations, for instance. Obviously, I understand that these change once you start to merge, and they change as you start to grow and if you direct list.
Yeah.
But to actually keep an eye on that, to make sure there's always an upward trend.
Yeah.
And we're focusing the next 24 months to try and drive it as hard as possible.
Okay. So what would be a longer term goal for you personally?
Me personally, I would like to continue working, but work less.
Yeah.
So maybe stay involved within the business, but for maybe 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay. And what about the business? So that's kind of like a shortish term plan to get to that threefold increase. Did you discuss a longer term plan?
Well, we discussed a minimum of trying to get to the 20 million mark
Yeah.
for that's just basic EBIT, what we would like to get out of the business. I
Okay.
would like personally, I'd be happy to stay with the business, take a bit now, a bit later,
Yeah.
um, but spend some time abroad, maybe working from abroad as well. With creating a group for or being acquired or acquiring companies, um, we're fair and we're honest people to deal with, and we want to drive value not just for ourselves, but for other people. This isn't about growing because we have greed and we want more ourselves. This is about developing and creating something, and for having all stakeholders walking away with a smile on their face and shaking hands.
Yeah, that's our ethos and ethics as well. So that's why I think that collaborative mindset is important. If you want to go beyond where you are as a business and really scale, you need to have that acquisitive mindset and that collaborative mindset. And you've definitely got that as a trio. Yeah. And I think that's the secret sauce that you've got where other companies don't necessarily have it, or they just haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah, because I think you normally sort of associate or attract to people that are similar to yourselves. It's the natural thing. And same in business and employing people, but you couldn't get three more different people to me. So,
Yeah,
Gary,
yeah, that's for
which is
sure. I
why
would back that
which is
100%.
why we protect our backs, and we've always got somebody who can deal with any situation, which is great.
Initially we came out of a company called IBS, and well, most of us did. So we came out of a company called IBS. So the original guys on the control side was Paul White, John Newell, Tony Higginson, and Philip Bray. So they started System 5. Don't ask me why System 5. I realise there's four of them. It's a question that's always been asked. And so they started that, and I started something called Trident at the time. My focus was much more service, and their focus was much more project. And we started off. I had a bit of a rocky road, being a 28-year-old installation and commission engineer. I deeply underestimated the value of administration team, which is not something I will ever do again. And because I did that, my life was extremely stressful. And after 3 years, I think, I tied up with the guys again who were looking to start a service department. Tied back in with System 5, changed the name over to System 5 Services, and it sort of grew from there. And then maybe 5 years ago, Dave came in, and we had a buy-in management buyout, and we lost Tony, John, and Paul, who remained in the business. And then Dave Woodham came in, who was ex Dweck, and then we started building the company up from there. And then from there we added an analytics company, and they produced Halo. And then we started doing LiveSite, which is a remote monitoring platform. And so they've been sort of building that side up, and doing their energy performance contracts. And yeah, it's sort of gone from there. We've got I think there's another controls company working with us now, which is Andor, which is run by Lewis Locke. It's an odd industry, if I'm honest. There are a lot of companies who are very that they don't like anyone to know what they're doing. They don't like anyone to know how they're doing it. And we've never been like that as a company. There's a couple of core things that we've always been like. We don't walk away from things. Something doesn't work, we'll stick with it until it does work. So which is probably the reason I haven't got a huge mansion out in and the second thing is we treat our guys well, and they generally don't go anywhere. And what we've done very well over the past is we bring people in from different areas. And what I've found is, rather than taking on guys from other BMS companies or other companies who are in a similar position to us, taking them on from outside of the industry because of how they are and how they apply knowledge is a much better way of finding people who have the same values as you in order to push it forward. We've got that. I can look out of my window into the office now and count on one hand probably the amount of people that we've taken on from the BMS industry, but from the people outside the BMS industry, almost all of them. Our top engineers, I think of our two top engineers, well, not two top, two of our biggest assets in the office. One, I believe, was a waitress when we took her on, and the other one was manager of fish and chip shops.
And do you think some of those skill sets from those other parts of their career have actually helped with their career within the business?
Yeah, I'd say so. The ability to be personable is a big thing. Obviously, if people like you, they're much more likely to help you with things. And again, the other two guys, the guys who worked directly under me, but I think one was a lecturer and one was one worked for a train company. So it's a big change from what they've done to what they're doing now. And yet the pickup of knowledge and the application of that knowledge is much quicker than if I take on a project manager from a different company and try to get them to fit into our way of doing things.
Yeah, because they've got bad habits.
Exactly that. And the problem is with those people is they tend to be much more ego driven. This is the way I do it. This is the right way. No one else does it the right way. Whereas when they turn up and they don't know, they'll ask questions. They'll see how we do it. As long as you've taken the time to realize that the level of intelligence and the level of you can teach anything. You can't teach how to be keen. If you're not keen and you don't
motivation and all those things.
Motivation, yeah. You can't teach that. Everything else you can teach. As long as you've got the ability to learn and the willingness to learn, we can teach it.
I mean, from when we've interacted with the staff as well, it's something that we noticed as well. They come from all walks of life. And one of the things they say about you guys is that the training and the support is there at all levels.
The training, the training thing, as far as I'm concerned, the training thing is entirely because I'm lazy. The more they know, the less I need to do. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I know, but it's not always true in a lot of businesses that we interact with, that where the owners are aware that, it's actually better to go and get that quality training because it actually gives time back to them.
Yeah. And this is something I've tried to explain to some of the senior guys, is that they'll say, oh, but it's quicker for me to just do it. Okay, so it's quicker for you to do it. But if you show, I don't know, Joe Bloggs how to do it, it's going to take him 4 times as long as it takes you to do it. But next time it'll only take him 3 times as long. Next time it'll only take him 2 times as long. And you haven't done it those 4 times.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that's not a job you've got anymore. These days I get into board meetings of a multi-million-pound company and sit there and think at some point somebody will throw me out of here because they realise that I shouldn't be here. And sometimes
you obviously deserve to be there because you built the business to get there.
I know, but it doesn't feel like I have. It just feels like I've had my head down for a few years, and all of a sudden I look up and we have a massive office full of people. And it's a little bit scary sometimes when you think that a lot of these people, all these people rely on you to pay the mortgages, and not rely on you. That's the wrong thing to say. They rely on themselves, but they rely on the company to pay the mortgage. And that's quite a scary thing. It's not something I ever planned to do, but yet here we are.
Yeah, but it's down to a lot of the way you structured it that's enabled it to do it, and having
Well,
that head down
what I'll say
mentality.
is I'll give credit to that to Dave more than myself for that one. When he came in, and Phil, when he came in, they we had no accounts department. So we weren't particularly big. I think we were sitting sort of 1.2-ish. And then they brought in an accounts person, and then all of a sudden we had a department then that was doing that. And then what we found was we then structured ourselves in order to be a £5 million company. And the guys did that. They set it up. So our margins were rubbish. Because we're set up to be a £5 million company and we're running at £3 million. But then what happened is, because we had that structure, it gave us the space to be able to do what we needed to do. And then all of a sudden we jumped from the £3 million company to I think we've done 65% growth in the last year, which is ridiculous. And it's not showing any real signs of slowing down. So that gave us the scope then to do that. So now we've exceeded that. So all of a sudden our margins have gone from being rubbish to what we expect them to be, and better in some cases. I believe accounts are now moaning at me that they need another person, but that's one of those things. I'd much rather they were saying they need more people rather than we've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
And what I find is people are very much like money. So no matter how much money you've got in your pocket or how many people you've got, essentially your lifestyle grows to encompass them all. And that seems to have been what we've done. And then what will happen is me and Phil will then sit down and we'll do an organogram about how we want the company to look. We'll fill the spaces, and then all of a sudden we find the company then grows to envelop those people. And all of a sudden then we're doing another organogram to move on again.
I think a lot of people don't realize that what you focus on is what improves. And by doing that, you're inadvertently creating that whole mentality and focus. And as you're focusing on it, you know where you want to go. I think the other side of it, you said it's very much, I always see business like a family in one respect, that, when you're having those kids, you can never afford them. It's the same idea with employees. From a business owner's perspective, you can never really afford to take on the very people you need to get to a bigger family or to a bigger company.
100%.
And yet you do it and it suddenly happens.
Yeah. And you suddenly do afford it because you have to.
Yes.
But you don't, I think sometimes when you're, and I'm guilty of this 100%, when you're in the trenches, so to speak, and you're frontline, you're doing it, you need to stop and look inwards rather than looking outwards constantly. Why am I sitting there dealing with all this stuff? Obviously, I've got enough people, therefore somebody should be sat in my space, or two people should be sat in my space doing the job that I'm doing in order for me to be able to come back and go, right, hang on, let's do this, let's do that.
Yeah, and as you know, since we've been talking, one of the things I find that business owners tend to do is they may be in the business for 60 hours, but they actually represent 100 hours of work if you had to go and get other people to do those particular tasks.
Yeah.
And when they're trying to step away from the business, they give a task away and they go, well, I only got 30 minutes, but I no real value in that, if you know what I mean, from their perspective. But over time, they're able to step away and get a lot more of their time back, but it might take 2 employees to get 20 hours back. And it doesn't look like for a fair exchange of value.
But what I would also say is that of those two employees doing the 20 hours worth of work you've got back, they're doing it properly.
Yes.
And I'm not, I can do the job fine. And the problem is I'm pulled from pillar to post, and I'm aware I'm pulled from pillar to post. And so because of that, a lot of the times I'll do it, but I'll do exactly what needs to be done. Whereas if the guys are doing it properly and it's part of their role, they do it in a much better way.
Yeah.
And as
And
much
they're
as
accountable for it as well, where with respect, you're not necessarily as accountable to yourself as they would be to you.
yeah, absolutely. And because I'll find an excuse for it, and I'll
Yes.
approve the excuse in my head, and that's how it goes.
That's something we're all very good at. We're all very good at excusing ourselves from doing pretty much anything.
Absolutely. And I'm aware of my you know what? That is one of the biggest things. Be aware of your own faults.
Yeah.
Be aware of your own faults and try and patch it with people who haven't got the same faults. And I think hopefully I've done that quite well.
You talked about growth a bit there, Terry, but I mean, what does the next sort of 12, 24, 36 months look like?
Well, hopefully so this year we've always been very organic growth based. But this year we've decided, with the growth we've decided that for our organic growth, a more aggressive stance on that is the way to do it. So we've brought in an additional two salesmen actually over the last year, and in order to try and drive some of that, drive more work into the business. So we're looking for anywhere between 45% to 55% growth again next year, which is both optimistic and realistic in the fact that we've managed 65% this year without the additional sales labour. And we've had to turn jobs away because we just haven't got the time to quote them. So by bringing in this, again, the same what you were backing up what you were saying before, is that you don't have the time to do it until you have the time to do it. So with the new guys coming in, that should give us the extra time to do these extra works, which again gives us the space to grow. Additionally, we're looking to try and inorganically grow, and try and pick up another couple of companies. Well, let's go for one to start with, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, we'd like to try and pick up another company. Obviously, we started picking up our ability to deliver jobs in the Midlands already. So I'd like to grow on that.
You were talking about bringing other companies into the group. What would that actually mean to the company as far as resources or anything like that? What's the real benefit to you for bringing in a already established company?
Couple of things, right? So we tend to work for a fixed amount of people. We have a limited amount of overlap with a limited amount of companies. So on my side, we do a lot of service work. That service work generates a lot of additional work. And on from Phil's side, he has a select number of people that he works for as a like a continued basis. By bringing in another company, what we're doing is we're widening our footprint, and increasing the amount of labour. The only thing I would say is that by bringing another company that's already operating, we're not necessarily going to gain the extra labour on our side. With regard to back office, I think that would increase their ability to because we've got some overlap there. With regard to the field guys, there wouldn't necessarily be overlap because they're already maintaining their. But what we've got is we've then got the ability to offer things like the Halo and the Live site to a new group of customers. So overarching, we have a much wider portfolio of services to offer, and as such, increase our both our ability to deliver the service and the what's the word, the quality of the service we can deliver.
So from a business owner looking to say exit and coming to you guys, what you're really offering is a bigger, stronger operation, not necessarily, but you can open doors which they may not have access to, and so on and so forth. You've got that infrastructure already in place. Yeah. You've got the understanding of the industry. You've got the training programs in place and those sorts of things.
Yeah. And importantly, we have and I think you guys have been in the office. We have a nice, we have a very nice ethos through the company, and I'd hope to expand that. The things from that. I think if it was me sitting in my company, I would be as concerned about the people as I was about the money.
Yeah.
Money's great, but you've worked with these people, you spend every day with these people. They're their family as much as anything else. And if you're looking to exit, you want to know that the people that you're passing the company over to aren't just there to dot the I's and cross the T's. They're there to, you know, support the people and move them forward.
Keep that legacy going.
As I said, I'm lazy. I want everyone to be able to do their job properly. I'm quite happy to go in there and make sure everyone can do their job properly. You know what, right? And that is my view on what a director is. A director isn't the person in charge. A director is the person to make sure that everyone else can do their job.
Yep.
And if that means I'm taking the bins out, I'm taking the bins out. I'm okay with that. If it means that someone needs a shoulder to cry on, that's fine. And I seem to do that quite a lot. But it's knowing the people that work for you and knowing when they've got a problem and trying to give them as many ways to find the solution as possible. Sometimes people take the nick a little, but most of the time they're fine.
So talking about business acquisition for a moment, if you were to think about the specific types of business that are quite interesting from that acquisition point of view, whether it's the design, install, service, maintenance, analytics, or something else, I mean, what's sort of top of the list for you?
If I'm honest, more service than, for me, more service than projects. Phil would probably be more. No, Phil might say more service than projects as well, actually. Analytics we're not so bothered about. It would fit if they had, but if they didn't, it wouldn't be a problem because we have the analytics package that we could then offer over to their portfolio of clients. Good technical delivery. If the company is able to give a good technical delivery, then that would be a real bonus. There's a lack of real skilled engineers out there. What else? Also, you know, a good range of locations for engineers. Most companies are quite guilty of having a lot of their engineers based around where their offices. The more spread out they are, the easier it is to deal with a much larger scale of call outs and jobs. So the other thing we've been looking at with regard to growth is a mixture of both organic and inorganic growth. So with, as I mentioned earlier, the Andor guys and Lewis. Essentially what happened there is Lewis came on with us with an idea to start a BMS company and this and that. As we all know, the biggest pain about when you first start a company is that initial cost, the initial fact that you have no money, you have no backing, you have no paperwork, you have no health and safety, all that sort of stuff. So what happened was Lewis came in. He's on a deal whereby he comes in as a director of Andor, which we start, and is wholly owned by 4Energy's Group. And then as he hits milestones, his company is slowly shifted to him, with a percentage then held within the group to keep it as part of the group of companies. What that does is it gives really highly driven individuals who want to start their companies the ability to start the company, the ability to run the company, and the ability to have the back office backup as well as cash. So really, it gives them all the good things about starting your own company without any of the drawbacks. Other than the fact that he has to ask us for permission for spending large amounts of cash to start with, because yeah, you know. But in 2 years' time, he's got a fully operational, all but independent company that is part of the group. Is increasing everyone's margins because it's helping to balance the back office side of things. Yeah. So that's quite a nice way of doing it.
I mean,
that's working really well.
Yeah, for a new company, obviously, most 80% of all new startups die within the first year. Of that remaining amount, 80% die in the second year. So you're enabling them to go past that growth pain.
Yeah.
If they do die, then you know why, but you've given them all the resources, backup, and everything they need to get past those steps.
Yeah. And then what happens is
success is much higher.
Yeah. So what happens then is it gives them the freedom to go out and get these jobs, to bring on the new guys, to buy the equipment he needs to buy without having to jump through the hoops, and allowing him to leverage on our trading history in order to be able to get the equipment he needs without having to jump through the hoops of all the additional credit scores, etc., etc. And it seems to have worked, touch wood, really well.
I think I'm employee 3 on payroll. I started with the company in 2005 whilst transitioning, shall we say, from the previous company. So next year is my 40th year in the industry. I've seen this company grow from it being literally 5 of us. Our little office in Croydon just for 2 people, you could just get 2 desks into to what we are now, which is a good size for where we are. So my future is to remain in the business and remain in the industry, but I'd gradually like to take a more of a backroom, if you like, position over time, to be part of a strategic board, part of an advisory board, or something like that. So I'm away from the day-to-day minutiae of running around trying to marshal troops and think about programs and so on. Although you never get away from it. I don't ever see myself retiring, certainly not for many years fully. But the aim of the game has to be to change it up a bit.
So what was the plan in the early days of the business then? I mean, what was the sort of motivation?
The motivation was to create a company with the same attitude, ethos, and so forth as the previous company that the original founders were with, which was a company called Independent Building Solutions, based out of Croydon. Now, that was a fantastic company that many of us who are still here were at. That company sold, and the new owners, various circumstances, it didn't really work. So we ended up being made redundant. So I had a conversation with one of my colleagues in a pub one evening and said to him, Paul, this isn't working. What do you think? Should we start something here? Should we do something? And he said, hold that thought. And he went away and came back to me the next day, I think, and said, right, you don't know this, but me, John and Tony and Steve, our old MD, we're starting something. So that's how I came to System 5 and then full-time from 2006. And we were all of the same mind, that we wanted to do a good job. We wanted to make people happy, deliver well-engineered solutions, and do it whilst making a bit of money, obviously, because that's why we're here. And from there, we've grown very organically. Other companies have grown much faster in a shorter time, but you don't see any company there that's done what we've done and continued on a steady trajectory. There's a lot of, bright stars out there who shine, make a lot of noise, and then disappear. So it's worked well for us.
So what's the sort of the next stage then for the business? Because I think we've been working together for a while, and it's pretty clear to us, I think, sort of the ambition that you have for the next phase. But I mean, how would you articulate that?
I believe that we've now settled on an approach that works really well. So we want to build on that, whether that is through acquiring more talent, or strategic partnerships with other companies, acquiring companies, and using what we've developed now with all of our backroom capability to help them. So we can partner with other companies, we can acquire other companies. We've got a really well set up back room now, be it finance, the admin, the marketing side of it. We can take all of that away from people, and that is an economy of scale. And I believe System 5 4Energy Group, Analytics for Energy have all got very good reputations in the industry, and we can build on that significantly now.
So just in terms then of other businesses that either you will partner with or potentially acquire, I mean, what are those sorts of businesses? What are the ideal sorts of businesses, would you say?
I guess those businesses are like us in many ways, maybe like we were. Got good people, good reputation, good clients, good service book, but need that helping hand to get to that next stage. We went through a period of growth, and as I'm sure you know yourselves, there's various hurdles that you have to go over. The financial hurdles, which you have to have an infrastructure behind to get over, but that infrastructure has to be in place before you can get there. So you end up in a situation where you're growing your business and you end up with an infrastructure that might suit a £5 million business, £6 million business, up to a £10 million business. But because you are smaller than that, you're overweight in terms of your back office. So you need it because you can't cope, but the turnover, the margins aren't really there. So rather than struggling through that intermediate period of growth, why not come with us? Let us take that away. Allow those companies to do what they do best, whether a merger, subsidiary, partnership, however you want to cut it up. That's where we can help.
Yeah, because those glass ceilings are difficult to get through, and a lot of companies turn into zombie companies and just keep ticking along, keep hitting that same glass ceiling for year on year. They're doing great, but they just can't get through it. And joining in with someone like yourselves, enabling them to go through that glass ceiling, but it also enables you to go through your next one. Yeah, because there's always glass ceilings. So it's a symbiotic relationship between both companies or multiple companies to achieve that.
To try and achieve enough speed to get through it quickly, get through the pain a bit quicker than you would
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And also shared resources is another thing. It's not just not shared resources, upselling and cross-selling to each other's client base. You've got through doors that they may never get through, and they may have a door that you can't ever get through.
Yeah, and we find that already. With Andor company that is a side company, if you like. There's no way they could have got where they are now if it wasn't for us, both in terms of resource financially and so on, but also in terms of being able to help them out with trading history and things like that.
Yeah. I've seen it before where a tiny little company's got access to a very big, like an MOD contract or something like that, and a much bigger company just can't get through the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it opens those doors, and it works both ways because you've got the resources, the scale. They just have the door open. Yeah,
and and it is sometimes as well as resources. It's horses for courses as well. There might be a particular personality knows a particular person, or is a particularly good fit. They might have the same background in terms of where they grew up, what school they went to, what company they grew their career within, whether they're ex-forces, for instance, something like that.
Yeah, because people buy from people at the end of the day, and if they don't align with the person, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job, they just won't do it.
No, exactly. Not that I do much in the way of sales anymore, but I have found over the years that certain clients suit certain personalities. I tend to be very much engineer to engineer type sales, but I'm not somebody who's going to be selling to someone who comes from a completely different background. Then somebody else in our organisation may well be a better fit for them. And the more companies you've got, the more you've got in your team, the more you're going to find someone who's going to be right for that person.
Yeah.
Coming back to the sorts of companies that would be very good partners or acquisitions for you. What sort of companies are there? I mean, would they be other BMS companies? Would they be complementary businesses?
Initially, other BMS companies, but they could also be energy companies. Obviously, we have analytics for energy as part of the group. So it could be other companies who deal with more directly energy management as a headline. It could be an MSI company, Master Systems Integrator, which, as I'm sure you know, is if you like, a higher management level that often sits in the cloud and allows a client visibility of all of their systems, be it CCTV, fire access, and so on. And it can link things together very well. So, you might walk through the door of the office, it recognizes you from your badge or your RFID chip. Says, Mr. Gibbons, you are in room 43, and it'll give you wayfinding signs along the way. And when you reach that office, that room that you're due to be in, it's at the right temperature, it's as fresh as you like it, with lots of fresh air in it. The lighting level might be at a certain level for you. You might find the blinds are where you want them, and all of that sort of thing, which ties all these other technologies in that go into buildings. And that's coming to the fore more and more now. Obviously, we've got the net zero imperative. What we do is instrumental in carbon emission reduction. So it's a way of tying all these technologies together. So they could be parallel companies in the same engineering space, should we say. We're a very collaborative organisation. Everybody's got an ego, but we don't bandy it around. We help each other, which helps everybody. So we don't work well with people who don't fit into that culture, and that's a big part of it. People can go anywhere they want to in this company, literally, if they've got the ability, but moreover the right approach and attitude.
Going back to something you were saying earlier about key personnel, is there certain key personnel that might be in another company that would be really beneficial? Or key resources that would be beneficial?
Key resources in terms of product knowledge.
Yeah, whatever needed, whether it's product knowledge, whether it's client access, whatever it is.
Yeah, so we're primarily
or market access for that matter. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we cover a lot of the areas of the market. There are some specializations, some of the medical requirements in terms of how even things like air are handled, how many air changes, pressures, medical gas monitoring and things like that. It's all fairly straightforward, but you need to know it. One key area that is hard to get into now, but is very big in our industry, is data centers. Obviously, with AI growing as much as it is now, being able to get into data centers would be a very good bolt on.
Going back to your point where bringing companies into the group, whether it's strategic partners, JV partners, acquisitions, whatever it is, if you don't keep doing it, somebody will come alongside you and walk past you.
Yeah, and it's that you use the word innovation there. As our world changes, our world in BMS has gone from hard, if you like, starters, which are big electrical switches, big things that go clunk, turning power on and off. We don't do that anymore. Power is fed directly to things. What do we do? How have we gone? We've turned into network engineers. Over the years, we put extensive networks into for all of our systems to communicate. Ourselves, we've moved into the cloud. So with our, Halo and LifeSite systems in the cloud, we've moved our focus more up to the cloud. But what's happened now? AI. So AI, we've got to get on the AI train, and that sounds a very trite thing to say, but it's going to be in absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So how do we include AI into what we do?
Yeah, you're starting to see it in every day. And this was just like the early days of the internet. Everybody thought, I remember when I was personally involved with that, that everybody said, what do you need a .com for? And I said, I personally think one day you're going to see it everywhere. Yeah. And I think the same with AI. I think that as much as you love it or hate it, it's just one of those things that's okay, it's early days, but it's phenomenally better than it was 2 years ago. And I think it's just going to keep getting better personally.
Yeah, well, we're starting to look at incorporating AI agents into what we're doing. We've been using ChatGPT here on an individual basis, developing our knowledge of that. But that, along with IoT, of course, is all going to come together and be this massive, great ecosystem. And doing what we do in BMS, I think we're perfectly, as an industry, we're perfectly placed to have a massive impact on people's futures.
I mean, if you've got AI that integrates with what you were talking about earlier with climate control and everything else, just by your badge, it will automatically know who you are and what you like, kind of thing, based on your previous settings. Almost follow you around the room, follow you around the building, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And the future will move from being a massive database, configured to try and think of every eventuality, to just acquiring the information and feeding into your AI of choice, which will then make those decisions. Your programming will become a process of description more than actually knowing how to code.
Funny enough, I was talking about that first thing this morning, exactly that you can now prompt and create a whole app without any coding knowledge at all.
Yeah, my eldest stepson is a developer, a programmer, and even in the short period of time he's been in the industry, he's gone, from spending all of his time coding to now checking what the AI does, rather, what the AI does, and that's a huge change, and we've often wrangled great big spreadsheets here to do things, and now they can easily be replaced with an AI agent.
Like the old typing pools where they were copyright checkers and things, those and all that sorts of things. We're now gone full circle, and if he's just checking the work of the AI before it gets delivered, what's his actual job? He's no longer a coder. He's like the copyright checker kind of thing.
It is true, but you have to know what it is that you're asking it,
of course, yes,
to do. And that's where AI falls down. Sometimes people will ask AI to do something or a question about it because they don't know anything about the subject at all. Oh, AI said that. It must be true.
Yeah.
So I think that's the human intervention bit, isn't it? It's the checking the inputs and checking the outputs.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of curious about the innovation overall, because I think when we first started having conversations, it was pretty evident that 4Energy Group overall had a lot of innovation in terms of the analytics and in terms of sort of the net zero position. I mean, how would you say 4Energy Group as a whole differs from your competitors?
I think one crucial area does relate exactly to those things. I firmly believe that there is not enough recognition within our own industry of what a BMS can do. A well-planned, well-executed, and a well-maintained BMS can save huge amounts of energy, which, coupled with what we do in analytics with Halo, to monitor that energy usage, can really reap huge savings in energy usage. So that translates through to a reduction in cost and, crucially, a reduction in carbon emissions. Because it's undeniable now. The evidence is out there. There are some flat earthers out there who will not believe it, whatever you say. But they're the same people who didn't believe in the hole in the ozone layer, the effect that CFCs had, or lead in petrol. So yeah, incidentally, the idea of lead in petrol and CFCs was thought of by the same guy. So he did well, didn't he? But bringing all of that together, I do think, and it shouldn't be, but it does feel like it makes us unique because you see, well, nigh on unique, because you see precious few other companies out there who do anything other than just talk about the nuts and bolts. The built environment is a huge contributor to CO2 emissions, and people aren't conscious of it. So I think that's something we can definitely bring to the table, because obviously that then feeds into companies' ESG goals and CSR and, all of those bigger aims that we should all aspire to have. Sometimes it feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall. Sometimes you feel that things don't change in this industry, but if you keep trying, you will get there in the end. So I do think that's a differentiator for us.
If you had a magic wand, what would you change in the industry? You're just interesting.
If I had a magic wand, I would make it a requirement that energy usage is at the core of it. We have energy standards, various building standards, BREEAM, LEED, well building, neighbours, that all feed into that, but they're not really implemented enough in our industry from the outset. BMS feels very much like it's treated as an add-on to a building, and the consequent energy management with it. But it's at the core of how buildings operate. We are the central nervous system of a building. So you have all the various items of plant, that are like the heart and the lungs, boilers and air source heat pumps and air handling units. Yeah, that they are nothing without a BMS. They cannot operate in isolation, not and work properly. What other industry could you attract talent into that has networks, IoT, cloud services? You press a small button here on your keyboard and something absolutely massive happens over there. It's really got everything. We sell ourselves short.
You're currently covering the whole of London. Is there strategic partners in different parts of the country that would help you with your expansion plans, or you just focus purely on London? Not that that's a problem. It's a big enough audience, obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would describe us as London and the South East primarily. Maybe 75% of our work is in that area. We quite regularly go out to sort of as far as Oxford. That starts to get a little, not difficult, but it's not as easy. But having partnerships in other areas of the country, where there is a lot of work and therefore you need boots on the ground would be good. So you're talking about Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester, possibly Liverpool, those main nodes